How many of you see something that's kind of like this all the time, whether it's in your own home, whether it's on television, or if you're out in public? You see this over and over again. This is a just a new normal. Very young children addicted and completely bonded to technology. And though many would call this progress, there's room for argument. Um, I think there's a lot of problems that are coming out of this. There's a lot of things that we need to consider. Being an older generation, when they started naming or giving labels to block periods of uh, birth period to Generation X, Z, Millennial, and so forth, we now have a group that's being labeled as the Alpha generation. And I actually came across a really interesting children's ministry, and hence checked out their website. It's Grace for Kids, Grace the number four, KIDZ.org. And I'm going to look at a little bit of the content from a PDF that they offer there, which you can go there, and if you put your email address in, they'll likewise send you a free copy if you want to view the whole thing. I think there's quite a bit in it that we can glean, especially if you have a child that's born in this alpha generation, which they label those that are born 2010 to 2024 will fall into this category. Unlike many of us who were born in a world that wasn't so tech, just tech savvy or tech dependent, and we stepped into it either in our teenage years or even early adulthood. These children are born into it where every facet of their day is often guided by some technology, a tablet, an iPhone, an Xbox, something, social media. And this is just a part of their world. And I personally don't think it's a good thing. That's my personal opinion. I see much more harm than good. However, it is what it is, and we just have to deal with it. The alpha generation, the PDF states, and I have to agree, and if you live in the West, you would probably have no problem with this statement. They are the most pampered and the wealthiest in terms of materialistic possessions, gadgets, and the like, which makes them those that seek instant gratification. The have it now generation, they have no patience. They don't see working toward a goal. They're very selfish and they're overindulged. And that's not a good thing, but it is the reality that we face. We put a lot of emphasis on stuff for so many years that the kids, that's all they think about now that they literally have a screen that they can swipe and push. It's information at a whim. It's purchasing online at a whim. It's contacting someone halfway around the world. If you have a question, you get on YouTube or some other source. And there's some troubling things about this generation because there's such a, for one, they're so connected to the carnal things of the world. Just by design, just by the character of what this tech does, it makes them want to think in earthly terms in one sense, while in the other sense, as you see with some of the problems in modern days, they have a real hard time because they spend so much time in games, on social media, connecting to reality. They're really struggling with that. And we're at a point in history where the number of kids that are even growing up at some point in church or around Christians, they're leaving the faith. It used to be at college, high school. Now, according to the stats here, that many are even leaving as early as middle school. And this technology is, I believe, a big part of it because it disconnects the children from the world around them, the people around them. And they're just getting younger and younger and younger. You know, the thought of them sitting down and reading a paper book just seems odd for many of them. You know, they just don't see things the way that we see things. And in part, there is a problem in the way the church has performed overall in, say, the last 50 years, where kids were kind of given to the world to raise while we, lived our busy lives. And I think the fruit of that's coming about, and this technology has become the relational aspect that these children are using to compensate for real and true relationships. We as a church, you have to remember that children watch what we do. You know, they're fine with what we say, but they watch what we do. And what do they see online about church? They see a church scandal. They see a church of, maybe it's people they know on a live stream, say on Facebook does a live stream for a church that they know, and the people act one way during the services, but they see them the rest of the week, or they live with them the rest of the week, and they know that it's a facade that's being put on, the faith not being practiced or exercised beyond the assembly walls. And they know that, and they want something genuine, and that's a stigma that they see, and the world obviously sees it, and they'll make sure and point that out. A lot of times they're going to assemblies and there's no real connection there. There's no real relationships being formed, but they are finding some form of contentment in that area with connecting anonymously in a lot of cases, or very superficially in others, to where they can put their best face on and present it to a social media app. It's a very interesting time that we're heading to, because it has new challenges. With the ability to reach out and find information, they also have the ability to reach out and access things that genuinely it was not possible 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. Pornography went from something that was in the lower counter of the gas station, hid behind a bunch of things, but people knew where it was, to a child, from a child to you name it in age, with a few clicks can access some of the most perverse images ever concocted. Child predators is a real danger. The fact that it's shaping their mind. When a child takes something in, and we all are this way, and it's why we're to guard our heart, for out of it, comes the issues of life, that it shapes our worldview. They're taking these things in, and they're actually embracing them with more weight and truth or appeal than what comes from the parents' lips or the teacher's lips or the pastor's lips or the Sunday school teacher's lips, because it's designed to cater to their flesh and their emotions, and the world is very good at manipulating those. So the first thing that needs to change is we need to live our faith, not just when we're around other Christians at assembly, or um, if we go out or have a function with other believers acting one way. The child needs to see that at home. They need to see that Jesus is front and center, not just when you're in front of other Christians or in front of other people, but in your very home, in the way you walk, because they see that as a genuine relationship. Whereas if we just put on a mask every time we put on a suit, tie, dress, pants, suit, or whatever, if we put on our Sunday costume and then we're different the rest of the week, then everything that child hears is just going to be wah, wah, wah. And, just another facade, just something else I can't really see. But if the children see Christ in us, if the children see that there's benefit and there's change can come about in a person's heart and in their mind, and by them walking with the Lord, you're going to offer them something the world doesn't have and can't simulate on a game. But if they are living in a false reality at home on these technologies, they can create one they like even better, and it'll just be more appealing to them. So I think that needs to really be pondered and meditated on, because there'll come a day that each of us who've put our faith in Christ, we will stand completely alone before our Savior and give account for how we lived our lives after we've trusted Him. And that it'd be a joyous thing to see the Lord, but it's also a very sobering thing when He weighs our walk, when He weighs our service. And I personally think that should be something we never lose sight of, because do we want to say, Lord, you know my heart, and that was all I could do. I trusted you, I leaned on you, and He will know if that's true. And if that's true, then that proclamation of well done, my good and faithful servant, that takes it up a notch. One that has really sought from the heart to just use their life in whatever way they can for the Lord. And these children are among one of two groups that are most precious in society, and both right now are terribly neglected. And that's our elderly and our wisdom and our history, and our children, which is our future, our posterity. And both of these have been jettisoned in one way or another and given over to the world in many ways to deal with. And I say that to our shame, really. It just simply, it shouldn't have never happened, but that's where we're at. Our children now, I know I've seen it. You've probably seen it. Children barely walking can operate a cell phone, a smartphone. They can swipe it, they can pull up apps, they can find YouTube, they can do all these things. And we have grown so accustomed as a culture to just hand them that phone. to babysit, to hand them that phone. The child's getting on your nerves. You have things to do. You have things that got to get taken care of, and you hand them that phone, or you just throw them in front of a television, or you say, yeah, go play your, game system for a couple hours, just, get out of my hair. And it's just so easy to do that. I started seeing it really kind of in the later 80s when even the more primitive game systems came about, and it just grew exponentially as more and more households had these game systems, more advanced, more realistic, and so forth. And they're actually titling this generation, and is this not shameful? This Generation Alpha, they're calling them Generation Glass. Generation Glass. Because they're being raised as screenagers. Because everywhere they go, their face is in a screen. They have it on their wrist. They have it in their pocket. They have it, on a desk at home. They have it all day at school. They use it to shop, connect, to play, to be entertained. Living on these devices. It's pretty, in my opinion, it's really sad. Whether it's grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, they hand that kid that device so that they're occupied, they're entertained, so that you can do what you need to do. Where our toys were footballs and basketballs and bicycles and bow and arrow and these physical things, musical instruments, what have you, theirs are smartphones and iPads and game systems. I recently saw a game of a bunch of kids sitting around pretending to row a boat. We didn't pretend, we went and rowed a boat and, got on the inner tube, and they're just so addicted to these devices. You can see how easily it's going to transpire with the transhumanistic movement, which is a very real thing. If you've not studied up on it, I highly recommend that you do, in which they take bio and tech mergers when they incorporate these more conveniently into people. They're already working on it, and you can see how many of them would love this upgrade, so to speak, which presents a whole new problem. Where our identities were shaped by our physical friends and our activities and all of that, theirs is shaped by, much like China, a social credit score, likes and shares and comments and feedbacks on what they post on social media. And there's actually a phobia, and you'll see this even in adults, to which they said that screen time over the past few years has doubled. They even have a recognized, acknowledged source of anxiety called nomophobia, for the fear of being without your smartphone. We have a whole new phobia, a whole new product with a whole new problem that comes with it, where they're just literally scared to be without their smartphone. The average kid is on their devices hours every day. In a recent survey, and this is shocking, in a recent survey, on average, a child spent 7 to 8 hours a day, 8 hours, on mobile devices. Most of the time was devoted to the internet, social media, gaming, and texting. And the reality is, since kids in this younger age group are often not actually being under constant supervision. Some parents don't even know how much time they spend. It could be more than that, actually. You know, these kids prefer technology over almost anything. I've seen Satan use these devices and this new technology to just destroy relationships. That's in adults and in children and everything in between. Where I've seen family dinners where even the adults are just sitting there and you can't have just a old fashioned function because everybody's got their head down, um, staring at their phone, staring at their tablet, zoned out into the TV. Nobody's really talking. A chiropractor friend of mine actually treats a condition. It's pretty common in the upper neck that he refers to as tech neck. And it's from the constant looking down and the strain that it puts on that lower part of the neck, upper part of the spine area. And he treats this in younger and younger, and he warns parents about it, but you know, like many things, all you can do is tell them, what they do or don't do is up to them. But he calls it tech neck, and younger and younger people are dealing with it. It also talks about technology overload. And I remember years ago seeing studies on this where China and other people were actually studying these things, and it literally changing the physical nature, physiology of brains, along with the mental changes that it was causing. And it says that some of the consequences are cognitive, psychological, physiological issues, impaired social and emotional well being, and so forth, to include cyberbullying and all of that goes on. The study that was being done on the effects of the excess use of technology on the brain and its functions says that the years from 3 to 5, the children 3 to 5, very commonly now are hanging, looking at a tablet or some kind of technology. It says it represents a formative stage of development. It's a very important age for as your brain is maturing and growing, and for the child developing intellectually. It says too much screen time is set up for atrophy or underdevelopment of these higher order brain networks, because the brain just doesn't have to do any work. It will be harder for kids with underdeveloped networks to learn. It's like the lights are on, but nobody's home. And I've experienced this to some degree with some of these younger people that I've seen. You can talk to them, but what you say just doesn't click, even if you're breaking it down to their level. Another study conducted by the National Institutes of Health in 2018 reported that children spending more than 2 hours on screen per day demonstrated lower language and thinking test results. And children spending in excess of 7 hours per day on screens were found to experience premature thinning in the brain's cortex, the outermost layer of the brain that processes thought and action. And I agree with the author here that says, I don't know about you, but atrophy, premature thinning, neuronal changes sounds pretty serious to me. And I believe most of you would agree. And if that's not enough, Cox-Gurdon also states it's clear that children who have too much screen time can have deficits in other areas like language, imagination, and emotions. Technology is the ultimate shortcut tool for kids to get that instant gratification, that instant results, where they don't learn to the journey, they just want the results. It says a finger swap on a tablet results in an action on the screen. With that, the child's brain responds with dopamine. This was a big topic that came up as the gaming community grew and grew, was this surge of dopamine. And much like thrill seekers, you need more the next time to get that same kind of thrill. So they make the games more violent, more entertaining, more thrilling. But that goes away, and you see the continuation in the products, just trying to get flashier and flashier to try and get you that dopamine that your body's craving, because that's the chemical messenger for happiness. It's how we feel pleasure. And from that, over time, a child will start to internalize deeper in their brain that all actions, that everything they does, whether it's their job, everything should have an immediate effect. It should just happen, and it should bring immediate joy. And you see that with this generation growing up, even the tail end of the millennials, we see the problem. And this it's the now me generation. It's just not, everything has to be now, and it has to please me, or I'm not going to do it. Sound familiar? Do you experience any of that? The schools, I know they're dealing with nightmare situations with these kids and trying to teach them in their short attention spans that come from too much technology and other factors, technology being one of the biggest. It says this instant everything inevitably leads to shorter attention spans. That's the one that I've noticed really badly over the last 10 to 20 years, starting with the gamers and then with Generation Alpha and just the tablet and techers. Their attention span is that of a very hyper squirrel. 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes if you're pushing it. And if you notice, they're catering to that with the new apps. And even YouTube's doing it to kind of keep up with apps like TikTok and others. Because what do you notice about the videos? They're flashy, they're loud, they're give you a giggle or some kind of dopamine surge with an emotional story, but they're only 60 seconds or so, because that's their attention span. It's very, very short. That's actually a byproduct of being brought up, where technology is overloading, overused in their lives. It gives them a lack of persistence. They just want to quit. They don't want to push through like generations of old. They try to avoid struggles, challenges, and they give up easily. And I agree. I've seen it firsthand. Everything to them has to be an exciting presentation, flashy or whatever, to try and keep their attention, because they think of things like a game or their social media or what have you, and they think life's supposed to be that way. And that's why they like ideas like the metaverse and VR and all this, because they like life fun. Everything about it is fun and pleasing, and they want to be able to switch from one thing to the next to keep the dopamine going. It unfortunately has factored into this decrease of mental stability and increase of poor mental health in younger and younger children's. It says excessive screen time is also suspected of being the primary cause behind deterioration of mental health of kids today. And I have to second that. I think I've seen it myself. Those that spend a significant time focused on playing games, texting, and using social media are being found to experience a much higher rate of mental health issues and delayed social development. The immediate result of social media are often feelings of jealousy, inadequacy, anxiety, shame, anger, And when comparisons are inevitably made, when people are, one thing's compared to another, because social media distorts reality, just like these other things do, and it presents an unrealistic version of oneself and others that's designed to impress their friends and followers. Kids are losing their sense of wonder, trust, and innocence because the tensions and the issues can't be avoided, and they're consuming information they're not mature enough, they're not ready to cope with. Physiological problems that are coming out of this, along with the thinning cortex, are also the time that's meant for sleep is being traded off to use technology at nighttime. Texting, chatting, playing games, watching movies. These are all robbing the children of desperately needed sleep. Also, the concern for the abundance of sitting or the lack of physical activity. Technology has overpowered humans, impairing social and emotional skills, and it affects relationships. I have to say, man, it's just the reality that we're living in and that we need to be aware of so that we can identify it as a problem and try to seek a solution. There's safety concerns with child predators, that sex offenders, and all of these dangerous people that know how to create fake profiles or even use a legitimate younger person to connect with this child and try to draw them into something that they ought not be exposed to, or be put at risk for. We got to find a way to protect them from that, because it's growing and growing, especially these hackers and these real techie people are managing to stay quiet and anonymous well ahead of law enforcement. It says that there's a tension where children need their devices for school and that they know how to use them. So there's some, in some applications they need them, but we have to translate knowledge and wisdom into these children to know how to safely use them, and it's definitely not going to just fully happen at a young age. A lot of adults are struggling with it, to be honest. These children, says they're still children. They need time for unstructured, free play. Get outside, go play in the woods, go build a treehouse, go jump on a trampoline, go ride your bike, throw a football, throw a baseball, basketball. Find something, turn them loose, and just let them run. And there's also times they need boredom. And most parents probably might disagree with that, but there's actually a reason for that. For those that maybe used to write poetry or books, or invent things, a short period of boredom a lot of times is the moments in which those thoughts are born, when you're not distracted from all these other things. It says children complain about being bored, and what do? Often we shove a device in their hands so they won't be bored, or stick them in front of the TV so they won't be bored. But boredom is the space, the author says, and I love the way this is put. Boredom is the space in which creativity and imagination happen. It creates a time for these really awesome things to happen. God, using your mental creativity for these things to be born. We used to, as kids, possibly, hate being bored. I'm sure we all have at one point or another, but it says even neurologists agree that today, you know, they tell us that our brains actually need boredom. It's time of boredom when we have these margins in our day and quiet time to think. We have these creative moments. We can meditate. We have empathy. We can process. So just because your child's bored doesn't mean you just necessarily have to shove him in front of some piece of tech, because you're not actually helping them grow mentally. And mental growth is very, very important. And these children, a lot of times, are subbing, as I alluded to earlier, something that's lacking with this tech. And something as simple as meaningful relationships. That's in your church group, your church body, your home, these meaningful relationships. Because those 75% or more of the kids are leaving church, those interviewed that stayed, oftentimes point to the fact that they had a close relationship, they had a meaningful relationship with someone at their church body, be it a Sunday school teacher or a friend or whoever. And that was an anchor that helped keep them from walking away. So I think this is important in your church group. I think this is important. Our church family is a term I like better. Your church family, your physical family, is genuine relationships. Getting to know one another. Genuinely loving, genuinely caring, trying to help one another, creating these bonds. You know, because there's a very old mantra. You know, it says kids don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. And I genuinely think there's a lot of truth in that. When they see that you genuinely care, they care more about what you know and what you say. And if we back that up with living out our words, giving our words weight, I think that additionally strengthens the relationship and inspires the child to follow those same paths. When they see a change in you, and they're seeing the Lord in you, it's inspiring. It's not just your children; it's inspiring to other believers who are struggling when they see that a walk with Jesus and Bible study has an end game. It's not just to get smarter. It's not just to get hotter in what we can throw around and what we say we know. But it's change. Change in our lives, change in our thinking, repentance, true repentance, changing our thinking about any given matter, whatever it is. That so those steps that follow those words. You know, Jesus spoke and his steps matched his words. And it's powerful when we can emulate that as we grow in our walk with the Lord, and kids see that. We're in a generation that the world is trying to draw away more and more with this technology. Whether it's television, the internet, social media, games by the endless name and ability to play them. So I think one of the most important ways to combat this is being real. Being real. And because that's what they're running from. That's what they're refusing to embrace. And if you can show them that real is not something to run from, that they're designed to live in reality, and there's so much benefit in connecting with real people, maybe they can pull back from the tech, which has so many concerns and problems that it's just building in with it. You know, I just came across this article, and this is just part of it. Like I said, I'll put a link in the description box. It's graceforkids.org, to where you can go to their page and download this free PDF. You put in your email and send it to, verify your account, and they'll give you a download so you can read all of what the context is, because this is a new generation that we're dealing with. New struggles, new problems, new risk. Every generation has that switch over to where they were dealing with new problems and new situations and new mindset, and this just happens to be the one that falls in our timeline. But I think it has a lot of information in it that will be helpful, so that we can maybe pull our kids back from being called the glass generation, or Generation Glass, or Screenagers. It's one of those head scratching things that, we're here, and face this problem, this situation, as soon as we can, and realize that letting the tech of the world raise our children is probably not the best way to go. And these are just words to think on, to meditate on. And I just want to share it with you. When I find something interesting, I want to just pass it on to you and let you do with it what you want to do with it. But till next time, take care. God bless. Remember our elderly, how important they are, and all our children. They really are the future of every society. So it's important how we raise them, because we're not raising children. We're supposed to be raising future adults. So God bless until next time.